Welcome to Conversations with the Planets with Lori Kaufman and Alicia Cielle Heiser, a podcast that roots the wisdom of the stars into our lived experiences here on Earth and weaves the power of diverse healing modalities together with astrology. I'm Alicia Cielle Heiser, an astrologer, herbalist, and witch living in Oregon on Kalapuya land, and I offer astrology consultations and teachings aimed at helping you honor your most authentic self and trust your intuition.
I'm Lori Kaufman, an astrologer, tarot reader, writer, and teacher. I co-lead the Asteroid Special Interest Research Group for NCGR, an astrology organization, and I offer all different sorts of readings, online and in person.
Hey everyone, we wanted to give you a little heads up that this episode does come with a trigger content warning that we will be discussing instances of sexual assault and disordered sexual dynamics and instances where sex is used to assert power and dominance and control. So if those are topics that are difficult for you to listen to, please take care of yourself. There's absolutely no need to listen to this episode if that is going to be triggering or difficult for you. And we just wanted to give everyone a heads up so that you can consent to participating in this episode. So thank you so much. Right. Hey everyone. Today we're going to be continuing our Asteroid Stories series by talking about Horus and Set, which are two Egyptian gods and asteroids that can speak to a lot of different, very nuanced aspects of our life experiences in our birth chart when they're prominent. And Lori has done a lot of really amazing research about Horus and Set and where she's found them in different client charts and some celebrity charts. So I'll let you take it away, Lori.
Hi, yes. I'm super excited to share so many of these. We are going to split it into a two-part episode at least. So this is kind of just part one. Um, so yeah, I have found, so I was looking into Horus a decent amount because I actually have him on my moon. And I realized that his stories are so intertwined with Set, his evil uncle. And the more research I did, the more I actually found that the stories or the people, the clients, whatever, that I was finding Horus in, I was actually finding Set to be involved in all of those stories. And so, yeah, we're keeping them together, which we haven't really done anything like this before. So I'm really excited to show like two asteroids, and how their stories play into each other.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's
because
kind
we
of a
did like
new
our
thing.
Rhea and Chariklo episode, but that was more like not that their stories
Yeah,
interweave,
not
just that they're
together.
both prominent in your chart. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're right. The way that
Yeah, this is
like
a
they
new one.
always show up. Yeah, that's fun.
I love
Yay.
it. Yeah, so I've been using the Seth asteroid for Set. The his name is technically SET, but they're not totally sure with the translations and he it's so ancient. So um
Oh, and also, I just really
yeah.
want to quickly say for folks who might be newer to our podcast, we have a whole Asteroids 101 episode that goes into like how to look asteroids up in your chart, what asteroids mean, like just all of that. So that's linked down below. And if you're new to working with asteroids, it's like just rabbit holes on rabbit holes. And so we really encourage you to go listen to that, and then
Yes.
this will make more sense. But yeah,
Yes.
okay, keep going.
Yep. Pause there and then come back. But yes, there's a Seth asteroid and there's also a Sethos asteroid that sometimes I interchange them or I check both. But the Seth asteroid, because Seth was one of his original names, they just dropped the H at some point in history, and that has been the one that seems to just have the crazy stories. So, um, yeah, so let's get into Horus a little bit. He was a god that was associated with the sun, the sky, kingship, and vision. So he has a couple different stories, and we won't get into all of them, just the relevant ones, but there are many stories involving his eyes. One of them, his eye gets split. Somebody, well, Set slashes his eye and it splits into multiple parts, and those parts actually ended up becoming the chakras. So he has a lot to do with vision and eye splitting and things like that.
And I'm
Um,
gonna go ahead and share my screen because I actually have the Eye of Horus up, which is a very like
yes,
sacred, powerful
very
symbol.
popular
So we'll
image.
just
Yeah.
have Horus's eye with us while we are
Yeah.
talking.
It'll just stare at you all. Um, yeah, so Horus is the son of Isis and Osiris. They were two of the biggest Egyptian god and goddesses as well. He was depicted with the head of a falcon, and his name translates into the one on high or the distant one. Um, he was said to be the lord of the sky, the ruler of the day, and represents your identity and attention. Very solar conscious type of energy. He's kind of become an entity that represents Egypt itself. I feel like Horus is just such a big, like everyone recognizes him.
Well, and isn't he like all of the, he's associated with the pharaohs, like all of the pharaohs
Yes,
were an embodiment of, I
of
am
him.
not particularly familiar with Egyptian
Mhm.
lore, and this is also another new episode for us because this is the first episode we talk about Egyptian gods.
Yeah.
But he like there was like the pharaohs were an like earthly embodiment of him, right?
Yeah, something like that. I honestly am not too familiar with that as well.
And if any of our listeners are like huge nerds with Egyptian lore, please
Yeah.
correct us in the
Yeah,
comments or
please come
reach out
join.
because we definitely want to be. We do a lot with Greek mythology and we feel a lot more like equipped to explore that. And we don't want to like misrepresent Egyptian mythology at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Great. Yeah. So, Horace's family, basically his story shows up with this like giant feud. If you're familiar with the Lion King, um, that movie is actually based off of this story. So Simba would be Horus and Set would be Scar, the evil uncle. Um, so in one of the stories, the storm god Set tricks Osiris into a coffin and dismembers him in an attempt to take the throne. So basically, Set and Osiris are siblings, they're brothers, and they're just like constantly in this giant war, just like Scar and Mufasa were, right? Um, Same thing. Um, and so Isis journeys far to basically collect these pieces of Osiris that Set had dismembered and placed all over the world. Um, she never was able to find his penis, though, and eventually she found that it was eaten by a fish. But she was able to reconstruct it and basically becomes pregnant through the new and approved Osiris. So that's where Horus comes from. And he was basically raised to seek revenge for what Set had done to his family. So the this whole thing was like from the start brutal. That's when his eye gets damaged and yeah. So there is an alternate version that is really popular where basically things get really ugly during a battle. And in an attempt to show dominance, Set mounts Horus and releases his seed onto Horus's hand. This was seen as like a major defeat back then. So Horus goes to his mom to ask for help, and she comes up with this crazy plan that basically she chops off Horus's hand and throws it in the river and magically replaces it with a new one. And they take some of Horus's seed and places it on lettuce so that they could trick Set into eating it. So then in front of this council of gods, um, Set basically tries to declare victory by saying he dominated Horus and that his seed was upon him. And this is when Horus actually stands up and says, actually, no, gave him this lettuce and it had my seed on it and he ate it and his seed is no longer on my hand because it had been regrown. Um, so that was basically how Horus won the fight. Um, but there is a definite sexual assault case that came from this story. So I will put a bit of a trigger warning for at least part two um, in this story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, take care of yourself, and there will be just a little bit of content talking about the ways that this myth can be reflective of dysfunctional sexual relationships and abusive sexual relationships, and the ways that sex and dominance and power can weave together. So, yeah, just a little content warning for folks around that. And also, the lettuce insert is really interesting from an herbal perspective because, like, we don't necessarily think of lettuce as this, like, aphrodisiac, like, sexy food,
Yeah.
but apparently it does have those associations, especially in ancient Egypt. And what I do know as an herbalist is that wild lettuce is incredible, like not, sorry, I think it does have aphrodisiac qualities, correct me if I'm wrong, but it definitely is very soothing and helps folks sleep very well and is like a very good nervine and calming for the nervous system. And the part of the wild lettuce that you want to harvest to get those qualities is the white sap from the stem, which is just interesting considering
Yeah.
this story and Horus putting his seed in the lettuce. And so, just another example of the ways that ancient myths teach us about plants as well.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. I love stuff like that when you find these little connections. Um, And the last thing before we kind of dive into the stories is that his myth is where we get the medical astrology association of the right eye being associated with the sun and the left eye being associated with the moon. And so like the right being masculine and the left being feminine.
And you can even see that in Valens, which I remember reading and
Yes.
being like, why does the sun rule the right eye and the moon rules the left eye?
Yeah.
So
It
yeah,
stems
just
from
really
this story. Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah. And then since you did mention the Greek mythology as well, he is sometimes identified with Apollo, since there's always some sort of overlap throughout the pantheons.
That makes sense. And then just to really
Yeah.
point out, like this is Horus depicted kind of as a falcon or a bird.
Hmm.
And then this is Set with the more like dog canine features.
Yeah. Um, so right off the bat, like I have the Horus asteroid like 2 degrees away from my moon, and I thought it was really funny because my family has actually called me Eagle Eye since I was a kid. Because I have like this really insane ability to like find missing objects or like pattern recognition or like spotting four-leaf clovers as I walk. I've always had really good vision. Um, so I just thought that was kind of just like a very quick, interesting polarity that he just represents eyes and vision, and that is something that has been very like prominent for me. Um,
Hmm.
and an eagle and a falcon are similar. Um, yeah, and so I've found so many different crazy stories of how this is manifested. Um, so I had one client who actually had Horus conjunct her moon as well in her 10th house, and it was opposite the set asteroid, which was conjunct her Jupiter in the fourth. And she had to set really firm boundaries with her uncle, who like kind of bullied and pushed her around for most of her life. So she was telling me this story, and she said he's made very unwelcome jokes to her and like forces her like touch or like giving her hugs and just like won't really say no or take no for an answer and that kind of stuff. And she was really complaining about like I forget how this came up because she had some third house stuff and um I thought that was really funny. I was like, well, you're talking about a bully uncle. I'm gonna check that. And Hi everyone, I'm Lori, and I offer readings of any kind. I do astrology, tarot, and palm readings. And I focus on all different sorts of timing techniques and can basically help you answer any questions you might have. I also recently started a Substack to go along with my book I've been writing on the asteroids and astrology. And so I've been posting all of the fun stories in there. And so if you're interested in asteroids and watching them play out in your chart, or using them to interpret. I've been posting all sorts of fun stories in there, and you can go find that on my website. It's on my Instagram, which is linked below, and anywhere else. I also found this really crazy story. I have a friend who had LASIK surgery a couple years ago. And so I asked if he had the chart for when he got LASIK because it's literally cutting an eye open. So I was like, is there some correlation there? Um, and so I was trying to look for a correlation between Horus in transit and like the timing of his surgery and all of those things. So it did turn out that he had Horus natally, co-present with his sun and Pluto. I don't remember it being close enough to consider it a conjunction, but it wasn't terribly far away. And on the surgery date, transiting Horus was conjunct um, Uranus,
Mm,
transiting Uranus, which both were conjunct his natal moon exactly in Taurus,
hmm
opposite his sun. And then the sun and the moon represent the right and the left eye. He got it on both. So I thought that was really funny. Um, and the transiting Seth asteroid was right on his natal Horus. So they were opposite each other,
mm,
which I thought was really funny. I've noticed so many weird things with the transiting Set asteroid being conjunct Taurus
mm-hmm. That makes
and like
sense.
eye injuries.
Not being like the timing factor of when that natal promise will become fulfilled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of eye injuries, I have two more stories with that. Um, so a couple months ago, my cat, Leo, attacked my partner's face in the middle of the night and like just missed his right eye. Like just missed. It was like basically right here. Um, and so we're both astrologers, so of course we ran straight to the charts. And he's a Leo rising, and then my cat's a Leo sun. And so Mars was pretty close, almost exactly, I think, Leo's sun, and almost pretty close to his ascendant. And we started looking, and the transit Seth was on his Horus asteroid again. And so just it was so crazy. We also looked into the Odin asteroid, which was exactly on his ascendant because Odin is the one-eyed god, and all of these stories involve the right eye. And the Set asteroid was exactly conjunct the sun, which was on his Horus asteroid when all of this happened, and the sun represents the right eye.
Mm,
Um, so all of that was so insane. Um, and then I was telling this story to a friend of mine, and she was like, "Oh my God, I have this mutual friend of ours, somebody that we both work with on my dance company. She's like, I know somebody who has a crazy eye story too, and she's been looking for meaning in this." And I was like, "Oh, well, like send her my way. I would love to hear that story." And so I reached out to her and she gave me the date and time of the incident. And she basically told me this story that she was minding her own business, walking down the street. She was traveling, I believe, and some kid randomly threw a cup of ice at her eye and it like almost blinded her. It just like wrong time, wrong place, whatever. But just like the way this piece of ice hit her, it just like slashed her eye in just the wrong way. Um, and she's had trouble seeing out of her right eye ever since, and it just felt like such a random, weird coincidence, basically. This happened like 2 years ago. So I pulled the chart and she had the Horus asteroid in her third house, not really doing anything. But the Seth asteroid was conjunct the sun, exactly conjunct her Horus asteroid again in the transit chart of the moment that this accident happened. So I just find it so crazy that like, and the her Seth asteroid had the Horus asteroid transiting it as well. So it
Mm-hmm.
was both. Um, but I just keep finding these like weird right eye injuries that involve Set being conjunct the sun and transiting Horus in that chart.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Super weird.
And also just to highlight, like if you have Horus and or Set prominent in your chart, that does
Mhm.
not mean that you're doomed to have a right eye
An eye
injury
injury.
or to experience instances of sexual assault or sexual abuse,
Mhm.
especially not like there's no one factor in the chart that can say like what, is going to happen regarding things that are as complex as that in our lives. Because these myths and these stories are so nuanced and so layered, so parts
Yeah.
of them may feel relevant or activated for you while other parts may not. Like how the first couple examples Lori shared were just like her being eagle-eyed or, having
Hmm.
to navigate, the friend having to navigate weird dynamics with an uncle, but they weren't necessarily like abusive or harmful. They just weren't
No.
like the most comfortable. So there's so many
Right.
different ways, like any asteroids, right? Any of these like complex
Oh yeah.
myths that are prominent in our lives, there's so many different ways that they can show up in our lives. Because I notice people will comment, be like, I have this asteroid
Mm.
conjunct my ascendant. Like, what does this mean? And it does not mean that you're
Sure.
doomed to like live the entire story
Right,
out
right. No,
or like become blind or anything. There's a lot of ways that
absolutely not.
that the story can manifest for sure.
Right. And with my cat too, like his scratch was right under his eye and it was scary in the moment, but totally has healed up.
Hmm.
So, sometimes there's moments where like I mean accidents happen. Sometimes there are injuries or things that happen and it's pretty crazy to have this language of astrology to find things like asteroids to like really be prominent and like my friend whose example I just gave, she like we were able to just have such a beautiful conversation about these asteroids, and she had been seeking meaning in it and couldn't find anything that made sense in any other way. And so it was just cool to like finally have like oh, well, here's a transit that explains it perfectly. And she was like, you know what? That actually makes me feel better.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's super cool to have that language to give it after the fact.
Hmm.
Um, but like, yeah, once again, doesn't mean that you're going to have any issues or anything like that. And everything's a spectrum too. So like my client with the uncle story, like it was pretty minor except for like some uncomfort,
Hmm.
whereas some of the other stories are more the other side of
Like
the
Mufasa
extreme.
is a little
Right.
worse than that, for
Exactly.
example.
Right.
Um, yeah,
So
and I,
yes. It can definitely just show like weird family politics or power struggles or somebody you thought you could trust because they were family or because they felt like family, but you actually couldn't.
mhm,
Um, like hidden truths can also be a big thing with the
mhm.
eye. Um, so,
Well, and I'm
you
also
know.
thinking like the insight or like almost because you also have more of this psychic sight that you have, Lori, right? So it's
Hmm.
like, which comes up, with our Cassandra episode as well.
Sure.
but just the ability to see things others might not be able to see can be a
Right.
curse and a gift for sure.
Absolutely.
And then I'm also just
Yeah.
thinking of like the healing potential of astrology with this as well, of especially when we look back on instances in our on our lives that might have been more difficult, when we are able to have astrology as a language to make sense and meaning out of that happening. It's like as humans, we have these big brains, we have these big meaning making machines in our heads, and we want to assign meaning to things. And that can
Yeah.
just be tremendously healing. And astrology can kind of help to take it out of us that, like, we're not individuals like alone in a meat suit
Yeah.
floating through space. Like, we are part of this bigger whole and connected to the sky. And that can really
Absolutely.
give a lot of depth to the stories that we live out as well.
Yeah, and kind of going off of your like intuition way of interpreting the eye. There were some people who kind of interpreted it like that. So
Hmm.
his like vision between the afterlife and the living world and being able to see both or two perspectives. Um, and like there were stories I've read where like he had the creation of the third eye because he couldn't see, and so he like created that space. And
Hmm.
so that is a big thing you see a lot in Reiki practitioners. And I actually have found a couple people who do Reiki have Horus prominent.
Hmm.
Um, I've actually seen that a few times. And I have a Reiki certification. I have him. So I've had that type of stuff come up too. So there, every story has good and bad, but
Yeah. Great.
yeah.
Well, should we wrap up here and then we'll be
Yeah.
back with the second version,
Part
which is
two.
talking about the Nickelodeon, what was that
Yeah.
documentary?
The docu-series. Yeah,
It
yeah.
was what was it
Quiet
called
on
though?
set.
Quiet on Set. So we'll be
Yep.
talking about that and some more
Yep.
correlations with these asteroids. So definitely come back and tune in for that. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any personal stories to share or thoughts and reflections about what we discussed in this episode, please comment down below or reach out to us on Instagram. And please come follow us on Instagram at ConversationsWPlanets, where we share forecasts and updates about the astrological movements happening in the sky, as well as updates about our episodes. The link to our Instagram is in the show notes down below.